Good afternoon. My name is Dan Prieto. I'm a strategic executive with Google Public Sector Cloud, based out of Washington, D.C. Thanks, everyone, for joining today. I think we have a really exciting panel and a really interesting topic, and three extraordinary folks here to discuss cybersecurity and government with us today. I'll start by noting that I was in Aspen, Colorado last week for the Aspen Security Forum. The Aspen Security Forum is the premier national conference every year for U.S. national security leaders and the National and Homeland Security Press Corps. Not surprisingly, cybersecurity was front and center in discussions with the DHS Secretary, in discussions with the FBI Director Tom Ray, and in discussions with the Director of National Intelligence, Dan Coates. In particular, we talked about, often, threats to states and localities. We talked about threats to critical infrastructure. We talked about threats to elections. So it's very much front and center in the news. And that's an important point because I believe that we're in a transformative moment for government and cybersecurity. As all of you know, many of you know, governments often suffer from an overhang of legacy IT that is often expensive to maintain and hard to secure. They often are less able to compete for cybersecurity and IT talent. They face tight budget environments, and in many cases, they are behind where their commercial competitors have been in terms of initiatives to consolidate enterprise IT and to modernize their environments. It's in that context that we want to discuss with these three leaders today the state of security at the state level. So I'd like to introduce, first of all, Colin Ahern, who is the Deputy CISO for New York. He has background with the U.S. military and also as a threat researcher and in the financial services industry. Nelson Moe, who is the Deputy CIO, the CIO, excuse me, for the Commonwealth of Virginia and the head of the Virginia
Don't miss a meeting, get the motive.
IT agency. Exactly. And then from the state of Arizona, we have J.R. Sloan, who is the CTO and the Deputy CIO for the state. So with that, I'll open up and ask the panelists, just as a level set, if you could just describe your span of control in your state or in your city. How many users are there? What's the IT environment like? Just to give everyone a sense of how large an IT environment you're working with, and we'll use that as a pivot point to talk about security.
Sure. So the government of the city of New York is an enormously large and complex enterprise. Just as some fun facts, the city of New York has over 200,000 public IP addresses. That's over 3/16s, if you want to subnet them. There's hundreds and hundreds of internet-facing web applications. There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of endpoints, workstations, and servers. There's an enormously complex internal network, so it's an extremely large and sophisticated technology infrastructure which supports over 100 agencies, from the largest police department and in the Northern Hemisphere to some very, very small, bespoke public service agencies like the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs doing incredibly important work at the forefront of public service. So in that context, New York City Cyber Command defends the reliable service delivery by, with, and through technology systems for any government-owned technology thing. So that's us.
Good afternoon. So the Commonwealth of Virginia has about 9 million people in it, about the size of New York. About 100,000 employees, state employees, 2,500 connections across the Commonwealth, and about 60,000 mailboxes. Order of magnitude, about $750 million of spend every year, both in infrastructure and applications. And so it's a medium-sized enterprise, but it's one of the few states in the union that are consolidated. What I mean by that is there's Georgia, Texas, and us, that all the spend is coordinated by one entity, and that's the agency I manage. All other states have some sort of mixed bag where it's broken up. So in the Commonwealth of Virginia, I have two hats. One is the IT czar, for infrastructure, but I also have procurement authority. Ooh, procurement authority. Raise your hand if you want to have that number. So anybody wants to buy anything, right, Demetrius? Over $1 million has to come through our office, and so I'm constantly approving RFPs and procurements for any application, so I get a chance to see a lot of spend. So I'm uniquely positioned, the office I have is uniquely positioned to kind of drive both procurement spend and also infrastructure services. So it's really, Kamal's got it right now. One of the reasons why my team and my people here at Google is to, what's next? We want to go to the next level. We've consolidated 10 years ago. We're moving to a different contract model, which we'll talk about later on. But I want to make sure we adapt as fast as we can to make government relevant. I mean, who wants to stand in DMV for 60 hours? Nobody wants that. But all the services that the feds give money to, the states actually implement. So that's where it actually happens. State workers, prisons, Department of Transportation, all those funds get done at the state level. So, you know, for the advancement of the human condition, democracy, elections, all those things, we want to make sure our IT spend is all aligned with all that.
So in Arizona, as Nelson indicated, we're one of the ones that aren't consolidated. So to me, I think that brings some unique challenges. We have 7 million citizens. We have 36 to 40,000 employees, and they're spread throughout the state. So geographically dispersed, we have everything from the folks we have downtown, where we have our own dedicated fiber network, to folks that are dealing on various and sundry third-party through provider, lowest level link you can think of in terms of slow connectivity and so on. And so we've got endpoints all over the place. We're currently tracking over 100,000 endpoints within our systems. One of the challenges that we have for not being consolidated is that we deal with it would be like being part of a company where you have 120 franchisees who all think they own the company. And they get to make their decisions about how they're going to do things. I do, similar to Mo, I'm the chairman of a governance process where all projects over $1 million do roll through a public and private committee that I chair, where we have the opportunity to review, check for alignment with IT strategy as well as things like security.
Terrific. So let's pivot now that we have the sense of the relative sizes of your IT environments and sort of your responsibilities. Let's pivot to security. As we've said, there are nation states that are threatening critical infrastructure and elections. There are criminal groups that are trying to commit fraud or steal monies. And then you obviously have the general fears of data spills just from user error and things of that nature. Can each of you share with us what your top cybersecurity priorities and concerns are? And in the context of that, also comment on how you've worked with your political leaders, Governor de Blasio, Mayor de Blasio, Governor Northam, Governor Ducey, to make IT security a priority.
So in Arizona, from a threat standpoint, we see roughly 8.5 million attacks per month on the state network. And so that that translates into the SOC, which is run out of our organization. They can be doing as many as 15 threat responses per day for when things happen. In terms of what we're focused on, really at the end of the day, we're about protecting citizens and their data. We hold a tremendous amount of citizen data, and the safety of the citizens also flows through a lot of the state services. So that is the first and foremost priority, and that's going to be our governor's priority as well. We look at it and say, okay, well, what's the greatest threat that we're currently focused on is our end users. So the people that are inside our network. And the things that we're doing to address that is we're focused on security awareness training. We're working with advanced endpoint protection, doing our own internal phishing exploits, user and entity behavior analytics, tools like that. Those are the things that we're implementing today to try and help secure the end user, which right now is what we see as the largest remaining threat in our network.
So as luck would have it, my chief information security officer just walked into the room. So Mike, I got to ask the question, what's our biggest threat? And so I think the answer, I can ask, kind of parrot what JR said, but basically data, citizen data. We have hospitals, HIPAA data, we have FTI data, we have lots of sensitive data. In fact, and we got to figure out how to share it. So that'd be one way. Protecting the elections, the election systems is topical. I can't say enough about how we're doing with that. So it's a strong priority from the last governor and this governor carrying forward to that. As far as the biggest thing that keeps Mike and I up at night is we know that, although maybe not as big a target as New York City is or other places I've worked, you realize that if you want to mess with democracy, all you have to do is mess with 1 or 2 elections, and it makes an impression. So the elections, knowing enough about those election systems, I'm confident that we're doing the best we can to make those secure. But it's making sure that people have the faith in their government. That's basically the biggest thing we're focusing on. So risk is, what Mike always educates me, it's the probability and impact, the likelihood and impact of something happening. And so we weigh that with the attacks versus the actual impact, and then what do we do to mitigate that? So I don't know, Mike, we would take a specific one thing, but I think that we're doing the best we can to look at the inventory, do the audits, and then cat herd, for a better phrase, is 63 agencies around, and they all have different levels of money. And we try to they're essentially appropriated in some cases, but is getting across the goal line with limited resources, that's probably the biggest concern we have. Does that make sense? I hope that answers your question.
Yep. Colin.
Sure. So our number one focus is the reliable delivery of critical services. So, as a local government, that's our business. As a municipal government, even though New York City is the largest municipality in North America by some measure, we are first and foremost a service provider, and that is everything from critical life safety services, emergency 911 response, to the Department of Environmental Protection, which provides the water, the Department of Transportation, which runs the traffic lights, and on and on. So these critical services are what we focus most closely on. We are very concerned with resident, visitor, and business data. That's obviously an enormously important task. We've been entrusted, with our community with important data, so we take that enormously seriously. And moreover, we're concerned with reliability against both foreseen and unforeseeable threats to these services. So we think a lot about reliable systems, reliable architectures, business continuity, disaster recovery, and things like that.
Terrific. CIOs in states, as elsewhere, are in a really interesting strategic position, given the confluence of cost reduction initiatives, modernization initiatives, and security initiatives. Oftentimes, over the last decade, these have been separate initiatives. In my experience from my time at the White House and at Department of Defense, the OPM breach, a nation state stole personnel records on 20+ million people, including biometrics for several million. Put those 3 conversations, yes, did everybody hear? Was everybody here part of that? I was. The OPM breach, I think, put those conversations, in my mind, for the first time in the same basket. You need to achieve those objectives, oftentimes at the same time. Could each of you highlight a key initiative or the key initiatives that sort of, if you succeed on them, actually achieve multiple ends? It drives performance improvement, it actually modernizes me, and it brings security. Because oftentimes before that confluence of those issues, it was just, let's bolt on some security here, but I don't really change my architecture or things like that. Talk about that.
I'd like to mention an initiative that we're actually in the process of launching. We announced a couple of months ago called NYC Secure. NYC Secure is taking the position that we as a local government have a responsibility to provide tools to defend our citizens in their digital lives as well as their physical lives. So we're going forward with a number of tactics in the short term. One of them is an application for your mobile phone which alerts you when malicious activity might be taking place, but does so in a privacy respecting and aware way where this app does not have the technical capability to remove personal information from a phone. That's one tactic. 2 is all of the city's public Wi-Fi will have recursive DNS filtering. So if you are using the city's resources to browse the internet, you will not be victimized by a known malicious website, not doing content filtering, not collecting personal information, but just blocking things that are only there to victimize you. And in the age when, telephony denial of service, the change in the threat landscape and the next generation 911, first response network, we think that moving the city forward in these taking this position as a policy prerogative and making these two very real tactical steps, in addition to other ones that we're looking to do in the future, will move forward how the citizens interact with their government in terms of cybersecurity, and will enable us to continue to provide these services in the future.
So I'd like to use, can I put two examples?
Yeah, sure.
So quickly, we're moving from a single supplier that supplies all our IT infrastructure, roughly $350 million a year spend. We're changing it to multiple suppliers with a multi-service integrator. And so that will give us the architecture to consume in a build-to-adapt environment as opposed to build-to-last. If we do that, then I firmly believe that companies like Google and its suppliers and the Google Band, Google Cloud, Google Pod, what do you want to call them? All the Googleers can help us with moving to the next level and keep up with you guys. But without that model, without the integrated model, I don't have an adaptability to be able to consume IT quick enough. So we get to that, and we should be done with that on track by the end of this calendar year. That's and that's one thing. The other one is that I've got two of the staff here. Demetrius and Mike, would you raise your hands? They're the guys that are, a little higher, Mike. Come on, man. But we're interested in moving to the cloud big time. So we're a total OpEx model. We don't have a whole lot of CapEx in that thing. So it's just being able to move in that approach financially makes sense for us. So, hey, I don't need to own it. I don't want to own it. Hey, what's it take to get out there? So we're a services-based model.
Yep.
And so that I saw a lot of things about the presentation today in Kubernetes, and I'll get that right, Istio. I didn't butcher it, did I?
Kubernetes.
Kubernetes. Oh well, there's a couple of words.
Exactly.
Bear in mind a little generational insensitivity. The
He
flag.
was making Stanley Kubrick
Yeah,
jokes.
Stanley Kubrick nesties. Yeah, but my point is that. Because I couldn't keep up with the acronyms. But my point is that I get the ability of how fast it changes. That's what I want to get to, and that's why Demetrius and Mike are here. So that'll help the state to be more relevant in services, cost-effective agility. Those all make sense, and so we're really looking forward to those two things, multi-source and cloud.
Great.
Current initiatives that we have rolling in the state of Arizona. We spent the last, it's been, I'll say, a process of 5 years, which our CISO, Mike Lettman, has led an effort to enterprise security controls across an environment that does not inherently adopt enterprise approach to things. And so at this point, we now have, really in the last 18 months, we've gotten a lot of success in getting 13 security controls rolled out across all the 35 cabinet agencies, and those are being extended out to the total of 120 agencies, boards, and commissions. We have 3 more that are in the queue, so those are built on kind of the NIST 800 standards, identifying stuff to address the kind of the CIS top 20 as well as the major gaps that we currently see in our security controls. So getting the organizational change and alignment. And this is really through proactive management with the leadership at all those organizations, effectively showing them, here's the top 5 adopters that are being successful, here's the bottom 5 who aren't responsive. These guys are green, these guys are red. And doing those report outs in front of the governor. And it's been tremendously motivating. And we had good...
Shame factor, yeah.
So, but really, we've seen great cooperation, and I think that in and of itself is probably the single largest thing that the state is doing that's going to help us to be successful in protecting citizen data. Along with that, as Nelson said, I think our adoption of cloud, we've been aggressively adopting cloud over the past 3 or 4 years. And we look forward to, we talk about procurement. We're getting our procurement vehicle in place to actually work with GCP. So I'm looking forward to that and being able to start moving some of our workloads there.
Great. Let's dive more deeply into cloud, Google Cloud in particular. Let's share with the audience sort of where you are in your cloud journey. It sounds like everybody's reasonably early. But why did you choose Google Cloud? And what are your sort of first order projects? And then what's your vision for it over the next, let's say, 5 years?
Well, for me, the answer for why cloud is because organizations like Google can invest more in data centers and security and services than I'll ever be able to invest. And so that's going to put me ahead of the curve and help me do things where I don't add value in patching servers. I don't add value in pressing buttons. Our people add value in delivering services to citizens, and that's what we need to focus on. So it's finding the right and the best public-private partnerships that will move us forward, and along with cloud is agility. And so it allows us to be able to try new things, pay for what we use, avoid that capital expenditure cycle. So that's top level of why cloud. In terms of what we're currently doing, we're in the midst of rolling out G Suite within the state of Arizona. We did not have a single enterprise email and calendaring solution, so if you were in different agencies, you couldn't see one another's calendars. You might or might not be able to find the person you needed to connect with. And so that's a change for us. But it's also as we're going through. For any of you that have done cloud migrations, you have your guys that have been your server admins in the past, and they're used to going out and touching the boxes and moving things in racks, and they get nervous about what's their career going to be like. So now we're dealing with exchange administrators that are going through those things, and it's helping them go through and say, look, there's higher value things for you to do, and this not only is a good career progression for you. But ultimately, you'll be more satisfied in your work in doing this.
So Jared did a really good job explaining the why cloud, so I'm not going to reiterate that other than just say more cowbell. Everybody get that reference? Okay, so but why cloud, and what we did is that we had a single on-prem email system, and we moved it to Gmail, and we did it the worst possible time frame. Not because we wanted to, because we had to, and we were doing it under court order. We get court intel to do it under a lawsuit. Yep. During a during a gubernatorial transition and a General Assembly session. You couldn't pick a worse time. Yay! But why would you do that, Nelson? Just hey, that's the way state works. Okay. No, we didn't mean it that way. It just kind of worked out. And but I would like to point out, anybody here work for Google? Raise your hand if you work for Google. I work for Google. Those guys came in and helped us through that process. And the phrase is Google ears, Googlers.
I prefer Google ears.
The Google ears.
Google Nation, Google, anyway. They came down and made it seamless, and as best they could. And so we got through a court-ordered, mandated transition for 40,000 in over a weekend. It was phenomenal. And over a week, 2 days, 3 days. And so I don't know how that ranks in there, but big ones, but it's big enough, okay? But we got through that, and it's been 3 months now, and it has been the first step into adopting the rest of G Suite and so on. But we're going to clean that up, get that done. But we're working with an incumbent that did not want to work with the individual suppliers, so we're working through that goat rope. I'm from Montana, so you can Google what that looks like. But we're getting the other end of that. So, but I'm looking forward to the Google partnership team helping us through looking at the next part of the cloud services. We want to adopt that, but I got to get this thing through. So I know Tom Ray's in the back and his team, they helped us out big time, but I want to thank you.
So there's been a lot of great points said by Nelson and JR before, so I won't repeat them other than goat rope, which is a really great phrase. So we, our vision for New York City Cyber Command, we're only a year old, is to be that center of excellence in order to architect on-premise and public cloud workloads to the highest levels of reliability and surety that they can be architected to. So the city has strong relationships with all of the major public cloud providers, including Google, and that's not going to change. Some of our workloads are on-prem, and that is also not going to change. But the perimeter is increasingly elastic. Workloads are increasingly moved between on-premise and public cloud providers. Data is moving from public cloud provider A to public cloud provider B, and how we do that securely, reliably, at scale in a way that is both modular, that is to say it can be changed over time without re-architecting this entire system of systems, and flexible, that we can try new things and do new things to it and with it, is something that we're looking to. So we want to build an internal capability to, in one of our prescribed duties is to advise the mayor and city agencies on information security risk. And also, with risk comes opportunity. Risk is there's the pendulum swings both ways. A negative, a downside risk is something bad, but a risk that you can exploit, it can be an opportunity. So New York City Cyber Command is the place that agencies can go to receive their security services, but also to speak with the experts about architecting applications securely using public cloud. So that's what we're excited to do.
Colin, can you go a little deeper on some of the things you're doing on Google Cloud Platform? Log analysis for greater cybersecurity visibility, and also sort of workflow automation on the SOC side.
Sure. So, we're a new agency, so we had a unique opportunity to try some new interesting things. So one of the things that we believe about cybersecurity is that it is a lot of kinds of problems, but one of the principal kinds of problems it is a data problem. Yep. So there's an enormous importance to having the right data in the right format, in the right place, to the right person to make the right decision. So, instead of you can kind of go from data to the right, or you can go decision to the left. So one of the critical decisions that, we thought a lot about was, should this asset be removed from the network? Yes or no? So going one step back from that, what information do we need to have on our tier 1, 2, and 3 incident responders at our 24/7 security operations center to answer that question efficiently, effectively, at machine speed? And then, do we currently have that data extracted, normalized, transformed, analyzed, and presented to this incident response operator in order to make that decision? Then, how is it that we're acquiring and knowledgeable that we are or not, and at some instantaneous moment acquiring this information? So you can kind of go back. So instead of saying, these are the logs that I have, what can I do with them? That is an important consideration. That is something that all organizations can, should, and will continue to do. But what we did was we went, okay, this key decision to make us successful requires us to kind of take a slightly different approach to this problem. And that enabled us to go to a public cloud provider, to go to Google and say, this is what we need to do. Because like I said, we also, with JR, we're an extremely federated environment. We don't have a single, there are many common systems, but there also is an enormous amount of complexity in our environment. So us taking a new approach to this security problem, this security as a data problem, is something that we're really, really excited about doing. And so that kind of being extremely ruthlessly decision focused allows you to, because really information security is a risk discipline, and we need to become better over time. So the capability for us to warehouse a tremendous amount of data, to structure it, to go through this data workflow has been enormously important for us.
Great. Let's talk about how you guys measure success. Metrics are always tough in any IT shop. Oftentimes people just track dollars or track project completion. But in the security space, metrics are often difficult because oftentimes you're measuring what didn't happen. There's also a challenge around metrics because often the metrics that technology practitioners focus on would be a different set of metrics that a non-technology executive, a business executive, a governor, a mayor would focus on. And sometimes the technical stuff you focus on is Greek to that business executive. So talk a little bit about metrics, how you measure your success, and how you convey success to your political leaders.
Sure. For the Commonwealth of Virginia, from a metrics perspective, obviously the minimizing the impact of any type of breach is important, or cybersecurity event, or where I need somebody at the Google Nation to figure out how to generate the app to fix stupid. Until you come up with that, we're always going to have some problems. We have, in the Commonwealth of Virginia, from a cost-effectiveness perspective, we have a centralized model where we provide, because we have 63 agencies, some are big, some are small, but we provide a centralized service for both audit and security officers. So if they can't afford it, like the museums or so on, we provide that to them, because they're all connected to the mothership. So from a metrics perspective, unless Mike throws something tomato at me, I think one of our metrics would be inventory and audit completion. Mm-hmm. Just to say, what do we got and how we doing? And he's got this tool called Archer, which is the most boring video game I've ever seen. His team's always looking at their, and I get it's a data tool. They're cranking stuff out on it, but they're always, making decisions based on that thing. But the controller is just a mouse. Mm-hmm. Anyway, but he uses that as the metrics as far as those things. So Archer is a great tool for us. I was just kidding. He's got like 18 people that run it. And then, but for metrics, I think those are two big ones. And then if I could, see, what am I missing here in metrics? And then just making sure that we go through and protect the major functions and come with data and elections. If I could take a revision and extension of what we're doing for cloud, I forgot to mention, this is where White Demetrius is here, we're moving into a software as a service. We have quite a bit of those. We're moving quite a bit of our compute with that. We have a defined process for software as a service and to move the applications and compute in the cloud. And we're also moving into platform, and then Demetrius is going to help us stand up our cloud brokerage approach. So we're going down that road, but I forgot to answer that question. So if you have those answers there, go speak to Demetrius.
But before you
Yeah.
pass the mic on,
Yeah.
how often do you provide security updates to the governor? Who's in those meetings? Like,
Oh,
who's
yeah.
the political leadership in the meetings? Does it happen quarterly, weekly? I mean, obviously, notwithstanding an incident, what does that look
Yeah,
like?
good point. We provide an annual report. We provide updates to my boss, as Secretary of Administration, and then she'll funnel up to the governor. We're going to get much more opportunities to do that going forward. Now, this governor's now gotten past a couple of major legislative issues. Now is focusing on other things. So those opportunities become more and more scheduled, for lack of a better phrase. And so, like any new administration, you get some things done, but now you get more of the other things come to the forefront. So Mike and I have a much more opportunity to go back and talk to the governor and say, okay, here's where we are, sir, on these things. In fact, this weekend I have to generate that high-level sequence of things for reports.
Okay. Terrific. JR, same questions. What are your metrics, and what are those meetings with political leadership in the state look like?
Well, I'll start with the latter part of that, which is earlier this year, Governor Ducey issued an executive order creating the Arizona Cyber Team, which is made up, obviously, of members of his office, members of our legislature, members of leadership across several of the agencies, as well as our CIO and our CISO. And their role is to obviously brief the governor on a regular basis, and so that's happening monthly, where he receives a report on what's going on from a cyber threat perspective in the state and the state security and what risks we face. And so that to me, speaks to the question of, what does our governor think about cyber, and does he view it as something that's important, and does he see its its level of impact? And I think the answer is yes. In terms of metrics, we do not publish any sort of like citizen-facing metrics, because all that does is reveal the threat vectors to the attackers. But internally, what we do is we have standardized as part of the initiatives in rolling out the security controls. We've standardized on a tool set that allows us to aggregate the information from like our Nessa scans, pen testing, and so forth, and generates what's the equivalent of a credit score for an agency that represents their risk. And we are able then to use that to compare one organization to another within the state, as well as to get a view to the state overall and say, overall, this is the state's security posture. And we actually do track that not only week to week, but on a monthly basis, and that rolls up from all of our agencies up to the governor, so he can see sort of, how are we doing, and so as I talked before about the adoption of these controls, we can see their impact in how they're improving the security posture of the state.
Terrific. Colin.
Our number one metric is mean time to respond. As I kind of mentioned before, we really, try to ruthlessly focus upon this. We're a co-equal agency with the Department of IT, where the commissioner of that organization is the city's CIO. So we work very closely with them as the technology risk executive and ourselves as the information risk executive. So that's a dialogue that happens each and every day. We report directly to City Hall, where we have regular, periodic, scheduled and unscheduled conversations. But yeah, the thing that we focus most closely on, is our ability to provide security services to our agencies. So that's the number one metric that we track. There is also, we develop and ensure compliance with policy. So there is a policy, there is that component of it, and that is also something that we bring to our executive stakeholders and throughout the interagency community. Those are just some of the things that we're involved with periodically.
Let's come back around to election security, and I'll broaden a little bit to critical infrastructure security. This is an environment with such a fragmented set of stakeholders. I mean, there's no particular belly button. States need to work with utilities in the state, work with election officials who often don't report to the CIO and have different IT. And at the same time, Washington, D.C. is offering help. They've a couple months ago announced $380 million in federal grant funds. The Department of Homeland Security is offering remote pen testing, has given sensors to the states for intrusion detection. Talk about election/critical infrastructure security from where you sit. Do you have the resources you need? How do you quarterback initiatives in such a fragmented sort of ownership environment? And I'll swing back down to the end with JR.
So does anyone have all the resources they need?
No.
No, damn it.
Oh, I thought you would because you're consolidated, and you have all the magic there.
No, we don't.
So let's see where to start. I think the key thing. I'm going to stop that and back up. So some of you may have, if you were monitoring election issues in the news, Arizona made the papers, where we had an issue, and actually there was no breach. It was just a report that we were attacked, but that got taken and run with, and that became the front page. And so we got to spend some time, seeking to address that. At the end of the day, no system was compromised, no data was lost. When you look at what it takes in Arizona, while there are electronic, obviously electoral components in the voting systems, you would have to actually get in the voting systems, compromise the data cards in there, and there's say 30,000 of those spread throughout the state. So your chances of being able to do that, it would be challenging, not impossible. But then we also in the election system, there's still a paper ballot, and those can be manually tabulated, and so there's a check in the system. I think because of what's gone on in the news, in recent times, elections are at the forefront. All those that want to be elected are very concerned, wanting to know that again it's still a fair and democratic process, and that no one's manipulating it. And so our job is to get in there and make sure that we're taking the proper steps to properly protect that process. One of the things, moving on from that, getting into sort of the public infrastructure, and I think one of the other important things is the crossover between state, local, and private sector. And one of the things I think we are extremely fortunate is that Mike Lettman has wonderful relationships with not only the local, his colleagues in the local government, but also in the private sector as well. So we work with corporations in Arizona, and through a key effort is the Arizona Cyber Threat Response Alliance. And I'm going to ask Frank if you'll raise your hand in the back there. Frank heads that up, and that is a tremendous resource for this cross-organization sharing of information. And that's one of the things I'm very encouraged about in Arizona is that through those efforts, including, and I don't want to leave the federal government out of that as well. The FBI participates in that, law enforcement. It is all about the data, as Colin said. And so if we can share that information and share that in a timely manner, we're all in a much better place to protect things.
So elections. So the Commonwealth of Virginia is taking all the steps it can to make sure elections are reliable and secure. I work almost every other day or daily with my counterpart in the elections agency head named Chris Piper. And in fact, we had a call earlier today on how we're going to move forward with some things. We get lots of help from agencies, other federal agencies. Mike's on a couple of those calls all the time, and so Mike Watson. So from a setup perspective, you can rest assured that we're taking all the steps we can to make sure those are as secure as we can make them. From a critical infrastructure perspective, I'll be the first to admit I'm a little old school. I brought the Wall Street Journal in, and in it there's an article on the cyber attack on power generation. Not my first career is in power generation, nuclear power, so I kind of read it open. And instead I'm reading the article, Mike Watson's got the 4 or 5 websites open that he's got linked into for all the different things that say in more detail. But it shows you that the critical infrastructure notifications gone mainstream. If you read on front page of Wall Street Journal, you're gonna, hey, it's out there. It's not just for the Googlers and the Google hacks or the nerds. It's everybody gets it. So we need to take steps to protect that. And And we do reach out to our friends from the power generation guys in Dominion Energy, but we understand that it's a multi-stakeholder kind of thing, and we have a good team that's doing it.
There's been a lot of great things already said, so I won't rehash them. So, suffice it to say that the city of New York and the mayor works very closely with the state government and the federal government to ensure that people are enabled to vote from the time that they register to the time that the ballot is counted. New York is also a state in which there is a fully auditable paper ballot, so it's that's an enormously important feature of reliability. But that's not the only component of reliability to an election system. From a systems engineering perspective, you can think that it would be very hard to compromise tens of thousands of election systems around a state. But would it be as hard to have people lose confidence in some election system via the interaction of social media, name a foreign power, and their capability to spread propaganda and other things around an issue? So that's something we think a lot about, and that's something that does concern us. We're very confident in our technical posture when it comes to elections. And there's work to be done in order to strengthen the cultural, the social, these other kind of capabilities we have as a civil society to withstand what is an extremely real and meaningful attack on our democracy. Dan Coates at the Aspen Institute said the lights are blinking red. Yeah. And so that is something that we're taking enormously seriously. That's not something that the director of national intelligence, says lightly or to be cute or anything like that. This is something real, and this is something measurable. And when it comes to the events, on page A3 of the Wall Street Journal today, which I also read, I think it's important to note that there are different timescales for different actors. When it comes to advanced persistent threats, which I can't use both my air quotes because I'm holding this mic, but advanced persistent threats, or the kind of nomenclature that's given to nation-state actors, they're advanced in their tactics, techniques, and procedures. The use of zero-day, previously unknown vulnerabilities, very advanced spear phishing, things like that, and persistent. They're going after targets that they're not interested in compromising for days or months. They're going after targets they want to hold at risk for years. And that is a reality. So that has always been true. That is going to continue to be true. But how we respond as a society to this threat, I think, is enormously important. I think it is something in which we need to continue to evolve our discussion, both with the private sector. Take, for example, the power generation and other elements of critical infrastructure, our technology service providers, and our state, local governments, and other actors in the space. So this isn't something that's going to be solved overnight or right now. This is a conflict that is going to continue to unfold, and that there are no easy answers to.
Terrific. Looking at the clock, we have about 7 minutes left. At this point, I'd love to open it up for audience questions. So if folks want to walk up to the mics, raise your hand. Go ahead, feel free. Just introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Brian with Honey. First of all, Colin, that's a great shirt.
Yeah. Gingham is the new black, I think.
So hiring talent is very challenging right now. What's your strategy for obtaining candidates in this market? And or how do you bridge the skill gap with your current resources to ensure that you complete your security initiatives?
Great question. So firstly, we have an incredibly powerful mission. Broadly speaking, we're able to attract top-tier talent because we are doing interesting, important work. We are doing cool stuff. And moreover, you can't work for New York City Cyber Command unless you work for New York City Cyber Command. That is an enormously important thing. And we're also changing in some ways with our executive stakeholders throughout the interagency, our capabilities to take advantage of technology talent in different ways. We have a terrific partnership with the City University of New York, the Tech Fellows program, where we're able to get graduates right out of school to join our team, kind of in parallel with the traditional civil service system. We also are working to build an alumni culture, and that's a culture in which we deliberately as an organization have multiple entry and exit points on a career path. Technology, if you've been in a security organization, the way that they usually go is you spend about 18 months getting the kind of 5, 6, 7, 8, name this number of people together. And then for some period of months after that, everybody's really rocking and rolling. And then 1, 2, or 3 key people leave, and then the whole thing kind of, the centrifugal or centripetal force, whichever one is the one that makes things go away, that causes this team to kind of break apart, and then a new team comes in and this process repeats. And so we have some great models out there for how to build alumni cultures, for how to bring people into and out of, at the entry level, at the middle manager level, at the expert individual contributor level. And that's something that we're getting really good public support on with our private sector partners, with our academic partners, like I said. And the secret is there is no secret. It's just really hard. And I think that we're able to do it because we're just, there's no secret team other than New York City Cyber Command. So we have to succeed.
So Nelson and JR, I want you to take the talent question, but given that we have about 4 minutes left, Bill, if you can pose your question as well, so maybe field the talent question and whatever question Bill may ask.
Yeah, thank you. So my name is Bill Burns. The question I have is, you guys have mentioned a lot about election security, and even the balance between, having IT systems to help support elections, but also maintaining paper ballots. I'm curious if you're able to go into any specifics about how are you using technology, the cloud, to help defend and protect our election integrity, and particularly, when we're talking about technology and elections, how do we maintain citizens' trust that technology is actually supporting the electoral process, given that some of the attack vectors that you are probably facing, propaganda and whatnot, are being fueled by some of the same technology?
First of all, let's go with the cloud for elections. So, Mike, throw something at me if I say something stupid, okay? So, we have a really robust on-premise system, but we use the cloud, and I'm not going to mention the supplier, for large-scale reporting. So if you want to know election results, you don't come and you basically come to our data center. We load this up to the cloud, and then it gets magically content delivered to anybody who asks. So that helps us with as far as the daily reporting stuff. All the elections, the actual votes are done remotely, and then it's just the results that are loaded up. So the election, I think, process is very secure from a vote perspective and vote integrity. It's just reporting and the concept of the visibility, the optics of the election. That's where the cloud comes in. Hope that answered your question. So we leverage the cloud for election reporting.
Well, one quick thing I'll add, and we've heard this interest from a number of states, is also using Chromebooks and G Suite out in the field, because one of the concerns is the really disparate levels of technology and skill out in the field with election officials at the county level. Some people are still using faxes. Some people are still sending stuff around using AOL accounts. So creating secure endpoints is one opportunity, I think, for Google. But back to you.
Right. So not sure you busted AOL accounts for some reason, but
I'm ex-AOL, by the way. So
No, but I think that's good. And then as far as the talent, one of the things that this Commonwealth of Virginia has an advantage of is 10 years ago, we outsourced a good portion of the actual engineers to the supplier, in this case, Northrop Grumman, and we're going to continue that model going forward. So we're using a supplier. In this case, it's well known. Atos is our company that's going to do managed security services. All Mike has to do is hire 10 people to manage that, which is even tougher, but he doesn't have to hire 100. Mm-hmm. So we still have the talent pool, but not as bad. So that's how we manage that. So There you go.
All right, so for Arizona, my answer is going to sound a little evasive. We're in the midst of sourcing a new election system, so can't talk too much about that. But the issues that have been raised are all core issues of, at any point you're going to bring IT further into the election cycle. How do you properly protect it? How do you ensure the integrity of the data? How do you, and where can we leverage cloud? Because the last thing we want to do is, go back and create, a legacy system just because it was, perceived to be reliable. On the talent front, we have a two-pronged approach. one of the things that we seek to do is to attract talent. We provide, frankly, state government is a unique environment. You can work at a scope and scale and see, the type of issues that you would have to go to a Fortune 100 organization to see the same thing. And so, attracting talent into the door isn't so much of a problem because folks see the value. Keeping them over time can be more of a challenge. And so, as we're talking with people, we're really talking about and looking for those people that are invested in helping to protect the citizens of Arizona, because that's what they're doing. They're protecting my data, they're protecting their own data, they're protecting the citizens' data, as well as the systems of Arizona. So we take that approach to try and attract and retain the talent, and then we also partner with private sector for those things where, again, from a security standpoint, maybe we don't add as much value in maybe some of the straight SOC type functions, and so we look to partner with organizations and do some outsourcing on that front.
Terrific. Looking at the clock, we are out of time. I do want to thank Colin from the City of New York Cyber Command, Nelson from the Commonwealth of Virginia, and JR from the state of Arizona. They are clearly on the front lines of things that are critical to both the nation and to you as citizens of your states. So terrific. Thanks very much.